Okay, we're all connected. So, everybody, welcome to this Thursday episode of the Daily Sip. I hope your morning has been good. Or say morning if you're in the UK. I hope your morning has been good. And particularly mentioning time zones today because I'm joined by Neha all the way from India. Where in India are you?
I am in Delhi, the capital
In
city.
Delhi, in the capital. And you were saying it's 4.5 hours ahead of the UK time, right?
Yes. So it's
Any idea
4:30.
why there's a half-hour difference?
It's just the time zone because depending upon the location, we are in GMT plus 5:30.
Okay.
And yeah, so India is a big country. We ideally should have two time zones,
Yeah.
but politics didn't allow it to happen. So we just managed with one.
Down the middle. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Cool. Well, of course, you and I have spoke a few times with Skype or Zoom or whichever video platform, and with emails and LinkedIn. And we were both there was the Expedia Day a couple of years ago that we both and you were beamed in on the video feed. So we've had a few chats. So it's one of those really nice moments where it's kind of for other people to learn about what you've been up to in your business. And I think even like for people that have a disability in India would be a very interesting perspective for some of the viewers as well. So yeah, I think even for me there'll be lots of new things. Sunny's on the move already. Can hear him walking around. Yeah, so I think there'll be a mixture of you kind of sharing things I know, but for others to learn and benefit. But I'm sure there'll be insights and perspectives that I've not got from our previous conversations as well. So as always, if you'd like to just kick off with a bit of an introduction to you and the work you're doing, that would be fantastic.
Sure. So, hi everyone, I'm Neha and I represent Planet Able, which focuses on inclusive and accessible travel solutions for people of all disabilities, giving everyone the freedom to travel just like anyone else. Like they can travel solo, go on romantic getaways, or travel with family, friends, or adventure trips like rafting or skiing or hiking. And the group trips that we do are always inclusive. By that I mean in which we mix people with various disabilities and the non disabled to travel together,
Yeah.
thereby breaking that barrier that disability often creates when you think of traveling. So, in one group, you can have a blind person, a deaf person, a person who is a wheelchair user, a person with cerebral palsy, and a non disabled person traveling together.
Yeah, and just to be clear for anyone watching that, it's a new concept. The people that are non-disabled on the trip are there as a tourist. Like they're paying and they're not a carer or they're not working. They are having a holiday, but with a group of diverse people, basically. Yeah.
Yes. So they are just any other co-travelers who are
Yeah.
having a diverse and inclusive travel experience. They don't get discounts. Everyone pays the same, and they also get to experience a wonderful way of traveling.
Yeah, and I mean, my personal experience has been lots of holidays with friends and family, so not particularly with other disabled people. And then, particularly through my work doing the blogging and consultancy in the tourism industry, there's been a lot of trips I've done with a variety of disabilities and other disabled people. So what you're saying is a newer not concept, but like it's not something I've massively, had in my life. And I'm sure people that are not from a disability background, it's always that thing we have to do around educating and challenging stereotypes that, it's not that the non-disabled people are there working and it's part of their job, that it's just tourists together. And so I think it's really powerful what you're doing because it's challenging those stereotypes and it's educating people just in what it is. Just it's that such a newer concept. I think it's fantastic. So I think it's always good to start at the beginning. So could you just talk a little bit more around, what gave you the idea for this, like how the idea came around and how it began. And now Sunny is barking. I told you before, he's never barked during the daily sim. And
I
here he
love
is
dogs.
barking.
That's why he came in to say hi.
He wants to gate crash, I think. Okay, Cash has let him out, so he's free now. So yeah, just
Yeah,
the sort of founding story would be really interesting.
sure. So I am perhaps when I started, I would have been the least traveled travel company owner. I
Really?
proudly say that because as kids, we never traveled because both my parents are persons with disabilities. So my dad is blind and mother is a wheelchair user. And yeah, we always saw our peers going for summer holidays or winter vacations, and ours was just limited to going to grandparents' houses. That was it. And when we grew up and started earning, we were like, okay, now we have more income coming into the family, so perhaps luxury travel will solve the problem. But it was still not the case. You travel 2,000 miles only to realize that the place will not be accessible,
Yeah.
or it won't give you the kind of experience you would have looked forward to, or people would be judgmental about, if you face so much trouble, why do you even come, you know so, and it was
Not
always,
relaxing, right?
no, it wasn't. So it was, and they were going whatever places we were going to. It was always some or the other argument that I used to get into, which my parents don't like at all. They are like simple people. They are like, okay, let it be. You know, uh, that's the way it is
Don't
conditioned in
cause
India.
trouble.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the way people are conditioned in India, that this is not something for you, and that's fine. That's an acceptance. But
yeah.
I was questioning and arguing and picking these arguments. So they were like, okay, it never ends in a good experience. And one argument actually turned into a mob fight once at a
Oh, wow.
temple.
You're a real troublemaker, Neha.
Yes. And I had to be just dragged out of it by my sister. So after that, my parents put their foot down never to travel again. And that was the tipping point for me. Okay, now what?
Hmm.
And I looked for solutions and I could not find any. Then I started talking to other people with disabilities, what they were doing. So either they were not traveling at all, like accepting the fact this is not for them, or they were having the similar bad experiences. So then I researched more that, okay, in developed nations, there are few accessible travel companies. Like if I talk 10 years ago, there were like a handful, and they were focusing on one single disability, so they were still not solving our problem because we are a family with two different disabilities, right?
Yeah,
So then I realized, okay, it's a business proposition, it's a need that, it's a problem that needs to be solved, and no mainstream travel company would ever do that.
yeah.
So perhaps I can. So I did my homework for like 2 3 years, sat at airports overnight counting the number of people because there was no data. So I had to
Wow,
generate
that's
that data.
dedicated research. Wow.
Yeah, so I had to create that data because I didn't know, and I had a well-paying job, and I had to give it away to start this, right?
Hmm.
And my parents were retired, so I had a lot at stake. So I wanted to be convinced myself that whether it will be financially sustainable in the long run. So I would say just convince myself that I should do it. So yeah, there then came a point that I reached a point there. I realized, okay, now the homework is done. Now, if not now, then when?
Yeah.
And that's
No
when
one
I
ever.
resigned. I was working for Adobe that time,
Uh-huh.
and
So you had a
yeah,
really good kind of, stable corporate job, right?
yeah, I was into enterprise sales, so it
Okay.
was good enough. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just resigned, and my last month was November, and January I launched the company. So I did it in parallel, a bit of it.
And when was this? What year?
This was 2016. So 1st January 2016 is the launch date of the company.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So you've been going 4 years now, right?
Yeah, 4.5. Yeah.
Guys, because I think some of my backstory, but I quit a good stable job at a large NGO in London, and I didn't even have as specific an idea as you did. It was like I know there's something around blogging, social media, and also I wanted to travel, and so I think some people think that I went freelance because of doing a travel business, but it was more that I was generally doing sort of social media consultancy, but I was able to do it remotely and to travel while I was doing freelance. But I very quickly became known as accessible travel blogger because I was basically hardly ever in England. Um, but yeah, so obviously through that, I got to know the accessible travel industry very well. I left my day job in 2011. And I'm just sort of reflecting when you were talking about that of, there's this lovely, exciting idea and you're going to go and pursue the dream. And then sort of day one, I sat there and like, okay, what do I do now? It was so strange. So how was it for you? Like from that January 2016, like what happened? Sort of how quickly did the business evolve and what were some of the challenges as well?
Oh, it's been a pretty exciting journey, I would say. I mean, to start off with, so like when I did the first trip, that was, I think, towards the end of January. I
So
was
you did a
like, oh,
trip pretty quickly, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I was doing my homework with the,
Of course,
like,
you were ready to go. Yeah, 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 yeah.
so yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll be prepared. So I'll be honest, I wanted to be more prepared before I, like, launch a trip. But
But you
then
can
a
never
friend,
be totally
yes,
prepared, right? Yeah.
yes. So a friend of mine said, put it on a date and do a reverse engineering, otherwise you'll never get there.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. We had like 42 people out there of various disabilities and the
Wow.
non-disabled.
That's a
Yeah,
lot
that
of
was
people
it
for the
was
first trip.
because it was something of its kind, like one of its kind never
Yeah, yeah.
happening. And so
Were
there were
people
like
like, thank you for finally someone doing this.
yeah, but it had its own challenges. Even
Of
for
course.
that trip, it was a 6 hour local city trip, okay?
Yeah.
But for that also, I had to talk to parents of 40-year-olds to send their adult children who are earning their own money to send them in the same city they've been living all their lives.
Wow. So there was a lot of it wasn't just like a logistical barrier because I imagine that was easier to find some of the tourism attractions and places that were more maybe not perfectly suitable but more suitable for the trip. That I guess was part of your homework. But as you're saying that the customer side was challenging because of the attitudes of the some of the parents as well, right?
Yeah. And then gradually, like all like first year, second year, I was just experimenting. It was just hit and trial because there was no pricing reference. It was no like there was no reference. I was just
Yeah.
experimenting. Okay,
How much do
what
you
is the nice
charge?
price
Yeah.
point? What and how long is the trip that people would be more interested in, things like that, what kind of trips people would like, all of that. So it all went into that, and then I went bankrupt a few
Oh God.
times. So
Yeah, it's a good
yeah,
good
that's
war
also a
a
story.
war a war badge of honor for an entrepreneur, isn't it? That yeah, the failing is part
Yeah,
of the progress.
yeah, and that's the reason why even in the time of pandemic I'm like, okay, I've survived bankruptcy, I can survive
Yeah,
this.
we
It's
can do
not,
that.
it prepares you for the worst that can happen, okay? So
Totally. Well, we will get up
yeah,
to the pandemic in a little while. I was just interested with the first trip you made because again, there's people watching that will have greater and lesser awareness of this kind of stuff. So how did you go about? Did you create like an itinerary of the things that the people would do for that 6 hour trip?
yeah. So it was yes, so it was like we've identified the routes that people will take, what are the places that they would go to, because we had to work in alignment for all disabilities in
That's
parallel
what I was
together.
thinking. It's
uh,
challenging. Yeah.
yeah, so that goes into every trip till date. So every destination that we go to, we first do the destination development process, then only we send anyone there or take anyone there. So
Yeah.
like that became a protocol kind of a thing. And yeah, so that helped us, like the preparation is the key, like otherwise we won't be able to do.
And so when
Yeah.
did you sort of sell the broad idea to customers and then find out their needs and then sort of adapt it, or did you start with a sort of route and then just put it out to the customers, knowing that it would be suitable for every type of disability?
So there are different types of trips. So like once we did a lot of different types of trips, once we even took a metro train for an hour to do a running musical jamming and stand-up comedy in a running train. So we took the
Okay.
whole bogie to ourselves, because here in India not many people can travel by the metro train because it's very, very crowded.
Yeah.
So and we wanted to give them an experience and make it fun too. So
Yeah.
we took the whole train,
That's
the
amazing.
so it was just so the first earlier major part was creating awareness that something like this is possible and you can
Mhm.
do it. So
Yes.
all of these events were done to create awareness, not in just in the disabled community, in the non-disabled community
Yes,
as
of
well,
course.
that
Yeah.
people with disability exist and they have equal right to all of these public and
Mm,
tourist places as much as the non-disabled have. So they
yeah.
need to be seen more to have that access to those places more,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we need to, because even if I was going to any hotel or any government, they were like, oh, they don't come, then why should we accommodate? But they
Yeah.
don't understand it's a catch 22. Because you are not accessible or because you are not welcoming, that's why they don't come.
Mm,
It's not that they don't want to come. So
yeah.
that awareness has to be built up step by step.
So it has been a real sort of social change initiative, as well as a business that provides services in a tourism sector, because I can see how powerful that is, both for the sort of tourism businesses like the restaurants or the museum or the train company, to understand that disabled people, we're here and we want to come out and have fun and spend our money. And also, so what kind of people came on the tours and the trips that weren't disabled? Like, what did you kind of get an understanding of like how they, why they came on the trip, or how they felt more so about being around disabled people? Was it quite normal for them, or did they find it uncomfortable at any point?
So if the non-disabled who were joining the trips are, we give them a brief briefing or a training in the start about
Yeah.
the body language and about the verbal language, and that you should not be sympathetic and blah 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 and things like that. So that,
Yeah.
because a person without any disability who have had no interaction always has these apprehension and hesitations, that
Mm,
how would it go for them, right? Like they might have tried in the past but it shouldn't have gone well and they are still hesitant. But when you bring them together on this trip, they're like, oh, they're like just like me and they just happen to have a disability,
yeah. Yeah.
and that breaks the barrier. They become friends. So we do that travel buddy thing. Okay, if we have enough number of people, we align one on one. So
Hmm.
you don't have to be a carer, but you just become a buddy.
Yeah. It's just
So
natural.
they
Yeah.
realize, oh, yeah, and they are like, oh, they become friends. Then they started going out to each other's houses,
Yeah.
irrespective of whether there's a planetable trip.
Yeah.
And these people came back to me saying, oh, I want to make my office accessible. Can you help me? Because I want to hire people with disabilities.
Wow.
So, it's a systematic change and the ripples that go, that because they become your inclusion ambassadors in the society.
Yeah.
That's the most amazing part, which I never thought would happen, but did happen.
Yeah. That
I
is
mean, that's
phenomenal
the most
impact.
amazing ripple I have experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. 'Cause, yeah, I was just thinking there's an amazing
And
amount of.
that is the kind of awareness that,
Sorry, no, I think there's a
go
slight
ahead,
delay,
sorry.
but you finish. You finish.
No, no, I was just saying, I mean, that's an amazing way to create that inclusion in the society. That was just about to say.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. We got a couple of comments coming in. So, Ray is saying, "I love Neha. You're doing a great job." With lots of hearts there on the message as well. And JC Squared is saying, "So nice to see you interviewing international people." From Jennifer in Dubai. So we've obviously got more of an international audience than I realized as well, which is lovely. So that's cool. So yeah, what was I going to
Thank
ask
you
you
so
next?
much.
I think really in terms of when we're looking just before we get up to now and the COVID-19 situation, I mean, you mentioned that being bankrupt on more than one occasion. So obviously, like the business model has proven to be quite challenging. And yet, what really surprises me is that when you've got that community of people connecting outside of those trips, and you've got businesses that are looking to become more inclusive and accessible and employ disabled people in that way, it feels like there should be money coming at you from the private sector, the public sector, like maybe on a charitable arm where people donate. And I'm sure you've looked into all this, and I know how hard you work. So I more wanted to ask you, why do you think it's been so difficult to make this financially sustainable?
I think in the earlier times, because it was more about creating that awareness in people that something like this is possible and it's there and all of that, that took a bit of time to
Mm,
bring it to a model. So right now the model is there. Like it's mostly, I'll be honest, it's mostly customized trips where people are traveling for like say 20 days or 25 days or 30 days with us. So that actually gave us the financial sustainability in the
yeah.
in this
So you
time.
found it in the
And we
end,
then
but it was challenging getting there, yes?
yeah, so we had a lot of private groups coming in then. So it took some time to get that awareness out, but then it
Yeah,
picked up. Because when you do something radical like this, I think the world you might be a bit early for the world or something like that. So it takes some time, but then it takes off. So you need to have that patience that it will take off.
yeah, yeah.
And
I guess maybe that. And tell me if there's anything else you wanted to mention about the sort of journey of from founding up to today. Like, do add any more thoughts. But otherwise, obviously COVID-19 has created a massive disruption negatively to the travel industry. So including accessible travel, but it doesn't discriminate. It's affected all of the travel industry. So yeah, it'd just be great to understand a bit how it has directly affected you as a person and the business, but also some of the things that you're maybe doing or thinking about in a way of yeah, kind of reacting to the difficulties at the moment as well.
So I think yes, it has impacted the travel industry the worst.
Yeah,
And what I see is that even if there are any travel regulation or guidelines coming in, what I find missing is no one is talking about the guidelines for disabled travelers at all. I
mm,
mean, there is no mention, like whether you are traveling by air or you're staying at any hotel, there is no mention in the guidelines about disabled travelers that if they have to travel for work or for leisure or a small
mm,
staycation or whatsoever, there are no guidelines. It's like they have been completely ignored that they even exist. That
yeah,
is one thing that I see in the industry and everywhere happening, right? So we need to like what we have been trying to do all this while has been to mainstream accessible travel, because if till the time it remains separate, it won't be mainstream. So like that is why involving the non-disabled or involving people and training the hotels or the guides or the drivers about all of this, just mainstream the whole accessible travel
yeah,
industry. You have to mainstream it, otherwise it would always remain a separate group of people who have some special needs and need some hand holding or whatsoever.
mm,
the, this has been my biggest learning from the COVID, and even before that, that you have to mainstream accessible travel or inclusive travel. Ideally there has to be no company. I mean, that's my take, that why there has to be a separate company for disabled travelers per se. In the
yeah,
first place, if I have to talk about a utopic world, why do you need a separate travel company? Can't
yeah.
we create a world which is for everyone?
Yeah, no, it's true. And I mean, I think there's still that when you look at it in a marketing level, as you know, that's more and more where I've ended up. And with Purple Go, we're working with brands that are specific to disability. So it could be a wheelchair manufacturer, or something in that kind of domain. But as you've said, the key to inclusion comes from mainstreaming. So we're working with mainstream brands, but of course, you then on a marketing level want the customer to understand that everything's been considered and it's all what they need and what they want, and then also the advertising has representation from that community. So I agree with you that we almost don't want so many specialist companies. It should be part of the mainstream, but within those mainstream companies, you still need that specialist knowledge and
Yes.
understanding and the marketing, so that disabled people feel that they are covered and they have that trust. So it's inclusion, but it's still having that specialist knowledge. And so I could see what you're doing would be fantastic as part of working with a big brand, and you could bring that specialist knowledge. I mean, have you ever approached any of the big brands about that kind of idea?
Um, so not as such big brands per se, but I've approached a lot of governments. So it
Yeah,
took us earlier in the journey, I wasn't like I we were given actually some of the MOUs by the state tourism boards and all of that, but no one wanted to invest the money. They were like, okay, you raise the money from some corporate and do it. We are giving you the MOU and the right and everything. I'm like,
yeah,
oh, I don't have the money, and I really don't have the resources to go separate, like, apart from functioning the company, I go on fundraise also for
yeah,
those projects. So I had to deny those projects. But now I think it's gradually opened up when now they ask us to come and give lectures and create awareness in the conferences that they do for the whole country and the state tourism board, so that the boards take up the initiative to take that. So we are in talks with few of them. So that is changing,
yeah.
but not in terms of the company. To be honest, I haven't, but I would like
Right.
to explore that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know you and I have bounced some ideas around on email and LinkedIn, and I think the richness of having the interview and the conversation is that we get to sort of just explore different areas and different ideas just pop up. And I suppose for me, what popped up is that when Shrin and I had a commable, it just needed more money to help the product become ready for scalability in the marketplace. And instead of trying to find more money and more money, that's why Airbnb bought us out, because that idea that we proved to be needed and proved to work then was able to be swallowed by Airbnb, who have got the resources and the other knowledge. And similar with me and Purple Go, we proved on Disability Horizons that we could do marketing campaigns for different types of brands. But by partnering with the GOAT agency, they've already got the global awareness and knowledge of being a good marketing agency. So it's almost, I think at the minute, it's not an ideal time because of the pandemic. But once travel picks back up again and is, back to eventually where it was, it almost feels like that what you're doing, and it doesn't have to be like a buyout or a complete you becoming an employee. It could be a partnership. But if you got Expedia or Airbnb or TUI or all of them, you could work with all of them, but essentially offered this really unique thing, which is inclusive travel, all the things you've talked about. There's not a lot like it on the marketplace. I think they would be stupid not to invest in you and invest in making the idea even more grown and more robust. And of course, they would want something in return for that. But if that partnership makes it possible to do this with more people in more countries, etc., etc., I think that they would be silly not to go for it. And there are people around the world that are gradually coming out with these ideas, but you've got 4 years of experience on how it works, because an idea is one thing, right? But it's, as you know, it's when you're doing it, you learn so much about the product, the marketing, the customer. So yeah, just the sort of thinking out loud, really, that there's definitely something in that area to look at. But I mean, in terms of at the moment with the pandemic and COVID-19, so have you been looking a bit more to the sort of general disability rights and ensuring that disabled people are not forgotten more locally to you? Is that what you're sort of saying?
Y- I didn't understand your question, like related to
So at the moment, people aren't traveling because of the pandemic, but you mentioned the problem around, that even in your local area, disabled people are just being forgotten in terms of
yeah.
transport, in terms of work. So are you doing something in your local area at the moment while the pandemic is here?
Yeah, so like to be honest, when the guidelines and the lockdown happened, there was no guidelines even for the the carers for disabled people who live alone.
Yeah,
There was nothing. So then, the disability activists had to come together and ask for it,
yeah,
that we need it as an essential service and it needs to be there. But still, there were some logistical challenges on the ground. So we helped people to just work around, even if the passes were not getting through, because it's India, it's 1.3 billion people. Things
yeah,
don't go as smoothly as we want to. So we have to work around locally with the local police station, or uh, just talking it out and making it happen. It's like that. So we had to work, help a lot of people out that way. So that is what we have been trying to do in whichever way we can, across the country. It's not just where I am based. Wherever we have people who work locally or local organization, and we are able to connect and find some volunteer who can go some help. So whatever can be done remotely, because it's all lockdown, we cannot go out. Now they have started the flights, like last week, but
mhm,
otherwise everything was shut for 2 months.
yeah,
So
yeah,
no one could go anywhere, and even for volunteering, you needed a pass. So you cannot even just go out as without a pass to volunteer. So yeah, so
yeah,
it was a long process, but we did whatever we could to get the passes made, or to help people out with their rations or groceries and things like that.
yeah.
And regarding the people being forgotten, I think in the travel guidelines, if I have to say it, I have been seeing other countries. I didn't see guidelines anywhere. Like if I have like there are no guidelines of disabled people to travel.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, thinking about how the things you've discussed with the pandemic and disability in the UK, there were decisions made, and then disabled people were like, "Where are we featured?" Or in a couple of cases, there was quite negative consequences. So one was they were talking about if, and it was an if, but if there are not enough ventilators for the COVID-19 patients, that people with a disability would not get the ventilator versus someone that doesn't have a disability. And that just creates an awful message to the world about having a health condition and our value of life and all this sort of
Yeah.
discussion. And the other one was that we have the Care Act, which is the duty for local authorities to provide suitable care for people with a disability that need care, and that was taken away under the Coronavirus Act. So for a year or two, the Care Act is actually not enforceable. Now the government are saying, of course, that doesn't mean that we're going to take away care from disabled people, but if things were to get worse and worse because of the pandemic, there's no legal rule that stops them from doing that. So today they're saying they're not going to do it, but that legal protection has been taken away. So there wasn't just a lack of guidelines around disability in the beginning, but there was actually quite negative potential consequences as well. So it sounds very similar to what you've experienced, that people had to, in the disability rights world, had to step forward and be heard. And, there was stuff in the media and, speaking to individual politicians. And some of that's been improved and is a bit better now. But it's interesting. There's a similar experience that you had in India, really. I'm just going
I
to
would
go
just,
to a couple of oh, sorry, go on, go on.
okay, I just wanted to add a bit of things.
Sure.
So, you still have a Care Act in UK. We don't have anything like that here.
That's interesting, right? There isn't one in India. Yeah.
So, we are 1.3 billion people, yes, and we have some of the richest people in the world also here, yes. But there's a lot of disparity, and the government doesn't provide anything. So, whether you have to buy a wheelchair, whether you have to pay for your physiotherapy, whether you have to pay for your carer, you
Mm,
have to do it from your own pocket.
yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing that the government provides here. So,
Sure.
I understand my mother has to go for physiotherapy, and it cost us a bomb, but there is no other way. We have to pay it from our own pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
So
very
whatever
good
that
point
is.
to make. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is that is a very stark difference when we say, there's a first world and there's a third world. it
Hmm.
is it is there. So the
Yeah.
problems of the first world, when people talk about, okay, I didn't get that right, like the carer right or something, here things are much worse. So
Mm,
even if we are really fortunate that we are sitting here and we can provide for the means for the physiotherapy and everything, but there was a time my parents could not,
mm,
right? They grew from that when they
yeah.
had nothing. So I think that is there, and we still have to go a long way in there. Rather, one of my team members, she's a person with disability. She got COVID positive. Okay, so yeah, and her whole family was negative, and she was the only one who came out for positive. So she
Mm,
had to stay in the hospital for 1 week, which was inaccessible.
mm,
And like in terms of sanitation, hygiene, everything. And we like it was, fortunately, her second text came out negative and the third also came out negative, so it was just a week, but she still had to stay in an inaccessible hospital, because
mm.
even the hospitals are not accessible,
Yeah.
you
Wow.
know
Yeah. It's all.
so
I'd say that the struggles from the pandemic, like the way I explained it, were similar. That disabled people were not included in the policy and the
yeah.
guidelines. So there's a similarity. But no, thank you for making that clear. That yeah, the benchmark is quite different between the UK and India. I mean, when you look at disability globally, and different countries have good and bad parts around disability provision. In the USA, it actually is in a place where if you've not got a job and the insurance, then it's similar to what you've described in India, that there is no funding for care and for medical support. And people think of the USA being first world, like you were talking about first world, third world. People think of the USA as being that. And in fact, many people are left without healthcare and social care, which is phenomenal to comprehend when it's America, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
crazy.
but we are fortunate, we have the disability law similar to ADA passed a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
The implementation hasn't happened yet,
Sure.
but perhaps we'll take a decade or two to get there. The law
Yeah.
is powerful, no doubt about it. The disability activists have done a phenomenal job to get it passed.
Yeah.
But yes, the implementation is the key, that when that happens.
Well, we have the Equalities Act 2010, but it evolved. So, the Equalities Act covers different protected minority groups, including disability. But the Disability Discrimination Act first came through in 1995 in the UK. And even now, with the Equalities Act, it's very hard to enforce because it has this thing about reasonable adjustment. And so, if I was to go to a building and not get in it, sue them under the Equalities Act, I have to pay to sue that business. So it's a big risk for me. And B, the court could rule that to make that building accessible, for example, for a wheelchair user, would be too much money for them to pay to make it accessible. Therefore, it would be an unreasonable adjustment. and so they're not breaking the law. So I think you're right that having the law there is good. And in the UK, I'm sure there are many cases where it's been used successfully. In fact, I did an interview with Chris Fry a few weeks ago. So if you or anyone watching wants to watch that, it's very interesting about. I know that there was stuff on COVID-19 where a legal action was taken against the supermarkets because of around disability. So it does have some teeth, and it is a good thing to have the civil rights and the legal rights. But even 25 years later in the UK, it doesn't automatically mean that every business or every premises is fully accessible. But I think you're right. It takes decades for it to totally work and to be completed. But yeah, it's interesting to compare the things going on in the two countries. I'm just going to go over some of the comments. So Harry is saying, "Hi guys, great job Nia's doing. Would like some info in due course." So we can give people your details and websites at the end. Sarah's saying, "I'd love to travel to India, but I'm concerned about access." And that was before COVID-19. So it'd be great to go. Could you give a little bit more information about some of the places in India that are accessible, but the general, people coming from other countries, the sort of positive tourism experiences?
Sure. So you can even go to Disability Horizon. I wrote an article about how India is 10 reasons that India is still accessible for disabled travelers.
Love
So
it. You plug in my magazine as well. That's brilliant.
yeah. So accessibility is different here in India. So it might not be the same as what you talk about when it comes to a complete country like India, like US or UK, but it exists. And if it doesn't, we make it possible through temporary ramps or alternative routes or special permissions and things like that. That goes into a lot of preparation in destination development. So if you really want to travel to India, you can travel to India, of
If
course, after
possible.
the COVID-19 is over, this phase. But we'll love to have you here. We have had people from 15 different countries travel with us on an average for 20 days or 25 days. So they're traveling the length and breadth of the country and experiencing India in its diversity. So you can definitely come in.
If
And
possible.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, obviously, if I know Sarah's going to be on the show later this month as well. I'm looking forward to hearing more about Sarah's story because I've picked up from a couple of friends she's doing some really cool stuff. But if Sarah wants to obviously get more information post COVID-19 to come to
yeah,
India, then I'm sure you two can connect. You can see Sarah's written from the LinkedIn stream. So if you
okay.
find our talk afterwards, which is available on all the platforms, you can always connect one to one. But as you say, for everyone else watching, there's your article on Disability Horizons, and I'm sure on your website, which we'll give as well for more information. Harry saying, with my cerebral palsy, I love to travel, and I've always wanted to do the subcontinent in India. So I would love some more info in due course and to touch base with Nia. So that, as you can see, Nia is on my Facebook stream. So if you want to connect with Harry afterwards, we've potentially got two new customers coming in now already. But
I'll
no,
give you the cut, Martin.
not at all. It's amazing
Just
just to
kidding.
raise awareness of
Yeah, that's great.
what you're doing. Andrea, who runs the We Are Sound, which we've done some amazing gigs with the last year. Kasha and I joined the We Are Sound, and we performed at a few different venues singing like really awesome songs. And yeah, Andrea's just saying brilliant both. Um,
Thank you, Andrea.
and we've got a long one, so this might cover our faces, but I'll bring it. Yeah, there we go. United Nations, Habitat, Human Rights, World Enabled, Cities for All, United Cities, local governments, etc., have been working hard to formulate policy for pandemic response protocols for member states. Hopefully, many improvements will be enacted and cities will become more accessible, physical, digital, and social environments, and resilient, having learned from the glaring gaps brought to the fore during the crisis. So yeah, that's Jennifer who's writing from Dubai. And it's interesting, a lot of those names she's mentioned, they pop up quite a lot on my feed, and I've heard those names, and I've never really got right in the thick of sort of the core of what they're doing. But as Jennifer's explaining, it sounds like it's very much the sort of global policy level around disability and inclusion. So have you heard of any of those organizations, Neha?
So I have heard of World Enable, Victor Pineda, I think. I met him at the Zero Project in 2018. We won the Zero Project Best Innovative Practice Award also that time. So there I met him, and he's pretty nice. They have got like country representatives, and uh, as per my knowledge, they're working mostly towards the smart cities program to make accessibility and inclusion as part of the smart cities in whatever countries they have representatives in. So yeah, so it's more of a policy and organization level, like giving the guidelines. This is like my limited understanding of that.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Harry's saying I'd love to touch base one to one. Should I do on LinkedIn? But I think you're on my Facebook as well, aren't you, Neha? So that either way you can connect there afterwards. So cool. I think we're sort of getting towards the end. I mean, I suppose one thing I'd like to know is the going forward element. Sunny's back again now, making an appearance. Um, I mean, I guess the future is very unknown at the moment for everybody, whether it's just individuals and whether it's companies or entrepreneurs. It's all a bit unknown. But I think certainly knowing what I do about what you're up to, you definitely got your head round the way the model can work prior to COVID. So I think you've got a long way in terms of that side of the business model. And I do think that there's so much awareness and innovation coming through the pandemic that there's a lot of challenges and difficulties for disabled people, but I think there are silver linings. But yeah, just what are your sort of thoughts at the moment as we get come out of the pandemic? Where are you going to be focusing your attention, and what are some of your ideas?
So I think pandemics have a tendency to leap you maybe many years ahead in a few months' time.
Yeah,
So I mean, I think even though it's a very very sad time to be in, it is also a very good opportunity time also, that makes you think out of the box. Even though you have been thinking out of the box, it makes you think what are the other options. So
yeah,
in the last 3 months, every month we have defined a strategy and then chucked it, because by the time it was finalized, it became irrelevant,
mm,
right? So now we are working towards, okay, what looks like 1 year down the line or 2 year down the line. So now we are coming up with a bit of online experiences, so which
hmm,
people can just do it at their homes while they are stuck there, focusing on the things that are impacting them right now, whether it's mental health, or which is a key area of our focus, that how can mental health be taken care of while we all are stuck inside the lockdown, because the shielding would be much longer for people with disabilities than the non-disabled, right?
yeah,
So that said, that is a very very important area we are focusing on, and some hobby activities, and we are planning to include technology a lot of it into the future. So we are
mm,
working on a few ideas and initiative which are inclusive of a lot of technology, and we will make it as a separate vertical. I mean, not just focusing on experiences, but including technology and these online experiences as well. So this would become the mainstream for us,
yeah,
with all of these options. So, not just one option, a
yeah,
lot of options. And of course, so this year we are already in few countries outside of India. This year we wanted to expand more. It would be delayed, but yes, we are going to go global into other countries as well this year
yeah,
and next. So we are organizing even some local programs in some other countries too, so that people
sure,
can just go and have staycations over the weekend and things like that. So yeah, so more work happening actually. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's when it kicked in. I know I was personally concerned about the virus because of they were saying that people with health conditions there's more of a risk. So there was that just personal sort of survival type instinct, and having to adapt some things around the care team coming into the home, and so that there was that initial thought process. But in the end, I've been busier than ever, and it just feels like something has shifted around the world, that it's more open than ever to inclusion, and not just with disability, but we've obviously seen a lot the last couple of weeks with the Black Lives Matter movement, of very awful circumstances as to why that's been propelled forward at the death of George Floyd. But there's just so much more awareness around people that have previously been excluded, whether knowingly or unknowingly. And yeah, I feel it's a really positive time going forward, that technology is empowering and attitudes are changing. And it's going to be exciting, ready to see what happens over the coming years. Just to say, Jennifer wrote, yes, Victor Pineda, the Cities for All movement, is looking to have all city governments sign on to the Global Accessibility Compact. I'll see if I can get Victor on the show, because that would be quite an interesting conversation about what they're up to. I think he's in the USA, which might make I do it every weekday at midday, but we could always move it if that fits in. But yeah, I think that'd be interesting to hear from Victor. But yes, I mean, last really, just how can people follow you and get in touch and get more information, and even give support if there's people watching that have got ideas or time as well. I'm sure that there's lots of things you would be great to have people involved in. But yeah, how can people follow you and get hold of you?
So you can go to our website, which is planetabled.com, PLANETABLED.com. And
Planet Abled, yes.
Planet
Okay.
Able.
Yeah.
So we're trying, so the name says because we need to change the way travel happens on this planet forever.
Yeah.
So we're making Planet Able for everyone to travel.
Sure. I love it. I
And
love it.
you can reach out to me directly at Neha, Neha, @planetable.com. And if you just Google, you can find me on all the social media platforms as well. And I'm open to all the suggestions, all the ideas, and all the help and support that the universe has to offer to us.
Yeah, thank you. That's amazing. And we've had a really good amount of interaction. So I think that international feel of being able to compare the differences, but obviously overall the similarities in terms of what we want from the world and what we want for disabled people is very much the same. But I think that was very interesting, and potentially a few people that once everything calms down are keen to come and see you in India, and I'm one of them. I've not yet
Yes,
been.
you should
I was
come.
all booked up. It was about 4 years ago, and there was a few circumstances that we had to cancel it that were unavoidable. But yeah, it's somewhere very much on my bucket list that I really want to get to soon. So,
I'll get you to India. I'll make sure that you come.
cool. Sounds like a deal. Sounds like a plan. Cool. Well, yeah.
For sure.
Thank you for your time. I really enjoyed that, Neha. And everyone, thank you for watching and for your comments. And do keep in touch afterwards. And otherwise, have a great day. And I'll see you tomorrow for Friday's end of the week episode of the Daily Sib. We've got Dan, who's from Department of Ability, and he created a whole comic series for his disabled daughter. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation tomorrow. So yeah, take care, everyone. Thank you, Neha, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.